So, welcome to the May 13th, 2015 City Council work session. I am Council President Claire Zyret, substituting for Mayor Piercy, who is up in Salem lobbying on behalf of the city today. Our work session today is actually technically a meeting of the Urban Renewal Agency, so I'm going to adjourn the meeting of the City Council and convene a meeting of the Eugene Urban Renewal Agency. And unless assuming that's appropriate.
Perfect.
Okay. And I will turn it over to City Manager to introduce our topic today.
Well, thank you very much. And then I'll ask Denny to lead us through the presentation with the rest of his team.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Denny Bro, Planning and Development Department, and we're going to tag team on this, and Mark Schoening from Public Works is here, and Ann Fifield, and if you haven't met Ann, she's our newest staff member. She's our Economic Development Planner in the Planning and Development Department, and we'll all take a little piece of this. We have a lot to cover. There are a lot of items, but we do plan to leave plenty of time for questions. We have the whole work session. So we're back today really to present a collection of investment strategies. And they're not only focused on the EWEB property, they're really focused on kind of the broader whole downtown riverfront district. Obviously, there are some elements that are directly involved in the EWEB property, but we're really taking a kind of a broader look. And we've had several previous work sessions talking about EWEB and the master plan and so forth. And at some of those work sessions, we've recapped really over 15 years of community engagement and planning associated with our goal to reconnect downtown to the river. We've also recapped this path that we've been on for a long time, and we've also forecasted and kind of mapped out how we're ultimately going to achieve that vision that we have to redevelop the riverfront area. And today you'll see that there are really some key investment strategies that are starting to come together to advance that vision in a real material way. So at our last work session that happened in March, we introduced you to the U of O Foundation Development Team. We really highlighted the strong partnership between the City of Eugene and EWEB and the U of O Foundation. And we also highlighted some of the opportunities and the challenges associated with this site. We talked a lot about the timing. Of course, EWEB and the U of O Foundation are both undergoing an appraisal process, which is being finalized. EWEB and the U of O Foundation is working towards a memorandum of agreement, which they expect to execute this summer sometime. And ultimately, they are working towards a purchase and sale agreement that they plan to execute later this year, with the potential to actually have the property transferred later this year towards the end of the year. And ultimately, talking about a potential groundbreaking as early as next year. We talked about that being important really for the cities to stay in sync with this timeline so that the U of O and EWEB will have some certainty regarding the city's investments, our investments, prior to the sale of that purchase and sale of that property. But we also talked about the importance of specific city investments that will need to really occur either before or coincide with the actual redevelopment of that site. At the last work session, we also indicated that we would be coming back with more detail on some potential action items related to these investments, and that we would be conducting a triple bottom line analysis of each one of these proposed investments, which we've done and which Ann will be highlighting towards the end of the presentation. So between investments, of course, you guys, most of the City Council had the opportunity to go on the tour. Hopefully that gave you kind of an up-close look at some of the opportunity and some of the opportunities in and around the EWEB property, but also some of the obvious challenges associated with that project as well. And hopefully it kind of magnified and reinforced really the strong commitments that are going to need to be made and the strong investments, the heavy investments in many cases, that will need to be made by EWEB, by the city and the U of O Foundation to really advance our vision for having world-class open space and redevelopment occur along the river. So today we're seeking support and in some cases action on several immediate-term strategic investments that we feel will strongly support, that are strongly supported by our triple bottom line analysis and that are necessary after many years of planning. Really finally see a new riverfront park, redevelopment of the e-website, and the emergence of really a unified riverfront district that's highly connected in this area. Beyond the motivation to just try to help facilitate, the property transaction and start of construction, we are really motivated by thinking about 2021 and the World Games coming to Eugene, and what is Eugene going to look like in 2021, and what is our riverfront going to look like? So I think it's really important. There's an opportunity here to really make a tremendous statement about a world-class riverfront when that event occurs in 2021. We're going to walk through several of these investments item by item. These are really focused on the immediate term investment strategies, and I'll have Mark kick that off as many of these are kind of centered around Public Works and their work that they're doing.
Okay. Thanks, Denny. So this first slide will show shows the just to get geographic grounding, shows the red is the outline of the Riverfront Urban Renewal District with the eWeb property up on the west end, and then on the east end is the Walnut Station. And in the investments we're going to talk about, it's important to see the connection between the university, the whole urban renewal district, the eWeb property, and even the Whitaker neighborhood which is to the left or west of this slide. And then when we talk about the investments, I'm going to go through these one by one, but these capital investments were drawn from the 18 planning documents that are shown as attachment A to your AIS. And for example, that includes the eWeb Riverfront Master Plan, the Walnut area, Walnut Station Specific Area Plan, the Pedestrian and Bicycle Master Plan, and others. And again, the capital investments will not only benefit the development of the eWeb property, but the whole urban renewal district, downtown, the U of O, the Whitaker neighborhood, and the community. And they're funded from a wide variety of sources, including the Riverfront Urban Renewal Funds, Park and Transportation System Development Charge Funds, Federal Surface Transportation Program Urban Funds, or STPU funds, and State of Oregon Connect Oregon funds. And in these next series of slides, I'll talk about each of these individual investments. So the first one is the 8th and Hilliard Railroad Crossing, and as you can see, 8th Avenue currently terminates into Hilliard Street with no direct access to the river and the eWeb property. The railroad crossing is further to the east of this intersection and requires out-of-direction travel and is difficult to navigate by pedestrians and bicyclists. So the proposal is to relocate the existing railroad crossing to align with 8th Avenue, and it'll include the supplemental safety measures that were talked about in the work session on railroad quiet zones, so this would be a quiet zone crossing. It's a fairly laborious and time-intensive process to work with Federal Rail Association, ODOT, and Union Pacific, so it's a minimum of 3-year timeline, so it's important to begin quickly. And it's one of 3 related rail projects that we talked about on our field trip, the other 2 being the quiet zone, and the third being the addition of a siding at the Amtrak station to allow Amtrak trains to overnight at that station. A new crossing relocating the 8th and Hilliard crossing is considered a new rail crossing by both Union Pacific and Federal Rails, and requires, per their standards, requires the closing of 3 crossings. The old crossing that would be relocated would be one of those 3. The new siding at the Amtrak station would require the closing of the Lincoln crossing, And then the third we've talked about during the work session on the quiet zone was Madison, but we also talked about doing a more robust public outreach for that entire quiet zone in determining which crossings stay and which crossings are closed. And the total cost to relocate the crossing is $2.4 million, and the June supplemental budget includes $140,000 in Riverfront Urban Renewal Funds to begin the design work for this crossing. The first, when we talked about the quiet zone in the last work session, we talked about phasing it, and that it wasn't just the 10 crossings downtown, but it was all of the railroad crossings within the city. So in talking about the quiet zone, it's really the first phase, which are the 10 crossings in the downtown area from the Hilliard and 8th crossing on the east end to Van Buren on the west end. And this is another project that is coordinated with Federal Rails, ODOT Rail, and the railroad owner, Union Pacific. So there's, again, a long time frame to process this, so it's important to start now, begin now. And so what you'll see in the supplemental budget in June is $100,000 to begin the design of the quiet zone for those crossings that are in close proximity and directly benefit the urban renewal district, which would include Pearl Street and High Street. And we'd also include in that the 8th and Hilliard crossing as part of that relocation. The next investment is the Riverfront Park, and this park concept was a key element of the concept plan that was, or the UWeb Riverfront Master Plan. And so the photo on the right is from the U of O Foundation, but illustrates what was in the conceived in that master plan. And the capital improvement program, the 6-year capital improvement program you adopted a month ago, included funding of $3 million over 2 fiscal years of Parks SDC to fund this project. If it becomes a legacy type of project, that cost will go up, and it may go up significantly depending on how much of a legacy that park becomes for the city and for the U of O Foundation. And we've initiated work on this project with starting the surveying and the design and the environmental review and regulatory review, and it's building on that significant amount of public engagement that was conducted as part of the concept plan in the Riverfront, or excuse me, in the EWEB master plan. The next investment is the bike share, and bike share, we completed a feasibility study for a citywide bike share program in 2014, and that was in collaboration with the Lane Transit District. And bike share is really a form of transit that provides access for bikes for those trips that are a little bit too long for people to walk to. So, for example, if you were downtown and you wanted to go to the future restaurant row for lunch, you could. The idea of a bike share is that you have a membership either daily or up to yearly. You swipe a card, you take a bike out of a docking station, you ride it to your destination, and you dock it in the closest station there and have lunch and go back to your office afterwards or to the U of O, wherever you want to go. So that's the concept of it, and we were successful as a city in competing for a Connect Oregon grant, state funds of $909,000, which are matched with local funds of $227,000, to implement the first 2 phases that were identified in our master plan, and that would include the U of O, downtown, the Riverfront Urban Renewal District, and the Whitaker areas as those first 2 phases, which would include 170 bikes and 24 stations. And we're discussing with the university because they're proposing their own bike share system of combining those into one bike share system, which would add another another 4 stations and 40 bikes. So it's a partnership really between the university, the city, and the Lane Transit District to implement this, the first 2 phases of this bike share. The next project is the existing shared use path. So for those of you that ran the marathon this past week, this is a section of it. It's a deteriorated asphalt path that goes along the riverfront of the eWeb property, and it's part of the Ruth Bascom Riverfront Riverbank Trail System. The idea is to reconstruct it as we've done other sections of the trail system to a wider concrete path, a more durable surface. This past week, the Metropolitan Policy Committee approved the city's funding request for $180,000 in federal surface transportation program funds to begin the design work of this relocation. And when that allocation process for all of the funds for the metro area happens later this fall, we'll pursue construction funding out of that same funding source, and we'll match that locally with our 10% match will be with transportation system development charge funds. And then on the east end of the Riverfront Urban Renewal District is the Walnut Station Mixed Use Center. And so one of the converting Franklin Boulevard from its existing configuration to a more pedestrian and attractive boulevard is one of the core components of the Walnut Station Mixed Use Center. And the idea is to pursue federal funds, again, the Surface Transportation Program funds, later this year for development of a facility plan, which is really the preliminary design and looking at different alternatives of street configuration, and then the environmental documentation that's required under the National Environmental Policy Act. And that request would be for $850,000 of the federal funds matched by $95,000 of Riverfront Urban Renewal District money. And the strategy is to queue that project up for federal Tiger Grant funds for implementation, and really following on what Springfield has pursued along those same lines with Franklin Boulevard through the Glenwood area, and they're pursuing a federal Tiger Grant in this funding cycle this spring. It's an ambitious goal, but the idea is to try to implement this project in advance of the 2021 World Track and Field Championships. And then with that, I'll turn it back to Denny.
So for those of you who toured the e-website a few weeks ago, you got to go through a couple of the two historically significant buildings that are on the e-website, this Boat Trust building and the steam plant. In the immediate term, you also heard from the U of O Foundation team about the possibility of moving forward with a King Estates redevelopment concept for the Boat Trust building. Although we don't have any specific numbers or proposals at this time, our experience really suggests that a building of this kind of scale and kind of historic value, that we're really going to need to have some tools available probably to assist with that development. We've done a lot of it downtown. Think about the Tiffany building, the Downtown Athletic Club, the Schaefer building, the McDonald Theater building. Most of those were lifted or helped with some tools through the City of Eugene and the Urban Renewal District, the Downtown District. Most of that has been financing, which is one of the primary reasons we are proposing the establishment of a riverfront loan program. And that's a program that would really be modeled after our existing downtown revitalization loan program. We have a loan program downtown, but it's only in the downtown district. There has been no loan program available in the riverfront district. Lending has been a really, really powerful tool. Those funds revolve. They come back to the city because they're loans. And it provides really tremendous leverage opportunity from those public resources through lending. And that provision of flexible financing really has shown the ability to transform properties like the Downtown Athletic Club, the Broadway Commerce Center, the old Taco Time building, McDonald Theater, and many more projects downtown. So what we are proposing is to capitalize a revolving loan fund in the Riverfront District with non-tax increment funds, and what we mean by that is simply funds that have been generated in the district that's not tax increment. It's miscellaneous revenue, if you think of it like that. For example, sale of property to the Northwest Community Credit Union. We sold property to the federal government for the courthouse project, and we would use some of those funds to initially capitalize the loan program. And the initial capitalization would be $1 million, which we have proposed in the fiscal year 16 budget, and that could be increased in future years as well. So the action really is to approve the loan program guidelines. Lending the loan program is actual and eligible activity in the Riverfront Urban Renewal Plan, but the plan says that in order to activate that loan program, the guidelines have to be approved by the Urban Renewal Agency. So that's the action that we're requesting today. We talked about the concept of a Willamette to Willamette plan, which is really our public realm plan for connecting downtown to the river and the river to downtown. It's really centered on a unified redesign of 8th Street, but it's really not only limited to 8th Street. We also look at 5th Avenue and other important connections to the river. And this is planning work that really needs to proceed or coincide with the design of the Riverfront Park and with other redevelopment along 8th Avenue that's occurring. City Hall's an obvious one, Whole Foods project, the shed, the butterfly lot potentially. All of those things come into play and really create an opportunity for us to rethink 8th Avenue, and that's really what Willamette to Willamette is. And that work is already underway, and we're doing that with some existing budgeted funds within the Planning and Development Department. Affordable housing, there's been a lot of discussion regarding the community's need for affordable housing. The University of Oregon Foundation team has expressed the desire to include a standalone affordable housing project within the eWeb property project. And it's possible that they might be considering even a tax credit, state tax credit application this coming year, 2016. And we don't have any specifics today, but we really need to start lining up tools like CDBG and home, the low-income housing rental property tax exemption, LRPT, STC waivers, and other things that we could do to really put them in a position to be very competitive when they submit that tax credit application. So although there's no action today, we are going to be working with them to put those tools together.
Is that affordable, or is that?
It's subsidized affordable housing in the more traditional sense that you've seen, like Westtown on 8th and Aurora and those types of projects. Beyond these immediate term investments, there are also some things that we think are upcoming that are potential investments, and we're not really seeking action today. We're not focusing heavily on those because we need more detail, and we anticipate that we be back to talk to council about a lot of these. But for example, when we go to implement the Willamette to Willamette plan, so that might include 2A and 8th Street, sidewalks, landscaping, those types of investments. Walnut Station, kind of in the same category, doing a lot of the planning work now, but the implementation of that project where we start doing work on the ground may be another use of resources that we would come back to council for. The steam plant is another one. You guys, a lot of you went through the steam plant. It's going to take a really heavy lift, and we anticipate really being back to talk about some of the tools we can use to preserve the steam plant. And then enhance infrastructure. We don't have a lot of details right now regarding streets and sidewalks and all those things, but those will emerge probably in the near future, talking about open space and landscaping and all those things, and really how we can invest in those things to really create a world-class legacy riverfront. We know some of those things will be coming back. And then everyone's favorite is always parking. The east side of downtown is already experiencing kind of a parking deficit, and when you introduce more density and more people experience the river, we just know that parking is going to come back. But it's not limited to parking. It's really how all modes of transportation get to the river and get to the site, including bicycle and bus and parking and all those things. But we anticipate that parking is really going to be a big issue as we move forward. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Ann, and she's just going to hit some high points on the triple bottom line analysis that we've done, and then Mark will come back and just tie this all together before we open up for questions. Oh, sorry.
We applied the city's triple bottom line tool to the different investments that the city could be making for the e-website. And to do that analysis, we considered the social equity, the environmental health, as well as the economic prosperity impacts. And we worked with the city's sustainability liaison to make sure we didn't miss any key impacts. And that full analysis is in your packet as attachment B. In addition to looking at specific individual investments that would be made by the city, such as that quiet zone in the park, we also looked at the impacts of the overall development, the new private residential and commercial structures, and many outcomes of that overall development can't be attributed to a single public investment, but need a variety of those public investments before it can succeed. And the results, the analysis showed that the public investment and the private development on the site has primarily positive impacts. And one of the reasons that the impacts are positive is because although the plans call for brand new development, there's no existing residence or commercial activity that needs to be relocated to accommodate it that won't negatively affect any vulnerable populations. The area is ideally situated to be a 20-minute neighborhood, which is one of the City of Eugene's strategies to decrease the reliance on cars and lower the community's greenhouse gas emissions. This neighborhood will be close to major employment centers, goods and services, cultural activities, and even open space. The mixed-use nature of this planned development, along with its proximity to the downtown and the university, it will create an opportunity for households to live in a place where it's easy to reduce their reliance on a car. New housing in this 20-minute neighborhood will help meet the community's expected demand for new housing. Building this new housing supply will help lower demand for new housing on the edge of the town, where it's more costly to build as well as service new infrastructure and where those residents have to drive longer distances for services and to get to their employment. The site will primarily include new private development, but the public investments ensure that the entire community has improved access to the Willamette River in the city center. The park will be a new destination amenity in the heart of town, accessible to the residents as well as any visitors. One of the key benefits is that the new development will create substantial new taxable value, and its associated property tax revenue. The new riverfront park and the reconstructed shared use path combined with the private development will create a new shared space that can be a source of civic pride and identity, and that new space will connect to the river, which is of course one of the community's primary natural assets. Another key benefit is we'll have improved environmental health. Although this development will be dense and urban development, it will actually improve the natural function of the existing site. The site right now has contaminated soils and it's mostly covered with impervious surface. Development will prompt environmental remediation to address the contamination, but the design of the public space throughout the development will include green spaces and pervious areas to minimize stormwater runoff, and the park will be relocated along the riverfront, which will improve the health and function of the riparian area. And so the public investments in partnership with the private investments will create this new space that will help the city achieve multiple goals.
So I was going to end with, after all that information, just what the specific actions we were looking for today, and it was to move to include $140,000 of Riverfront Urban Renewal District funds for the design of the relocation of the 8th Avenue rail crossing in the June supplemental budget, to include the use of $100,000 of Riverfront Urban Renewal funds for the design of the quiet zone in the June supplemental budget, and this would be the High and Pearl Street crossings. Move to approve the River Loan Program guidelines, and then of the City Council, we're requesting a motion to move the approval of submittal of a federal surface transportation urban funding appropriation request of $850,000 for the development of the Franklin Boulevard facility plan and environmental studies, with the intent of matching that with $95,000 of Riverfront Urban Renewal District money. And with that, we're open to questions.
All right. Well, I had a few comments, so I'll put myself in the queue first, and then I'll start a queue. Thank you very much for the presentation. So this morning, there was an article in the paper. Mr. Russo's article said the city can expect to spend millions on this project. So I really would like us to maybe put a little bit of framework around that and hear from you, Denny, or you, Mark, what you think that means when we talk multiple millions. Are we 3, 5, 25 million? I think it's significant that the public should have an idea of what we're thinking about as we go forward.
If you think about some of just the starting elements, which we've talked about, the park in and of itself is a minimum of $3 million. You might forecast that in order to really get to that kind of world-class park that's, going to be viable and for 100 years plus, it may be more than $3 million. So right away, you're already talking about millions of dollars. The railroad quiet zone is a significant investment. I think the total, for the 10 crossing was in the millions of dollars. Just the crossings that we're talking about, I think it's 2.4 million plus, maybe just for those. So, getting into maybe some infrastructure and sidewalks, and it's going to be a heavy lift. I think getting the historic buildings, for example, preserved and actively reused is going to be probably a lift. So I think, yes, I think we are talking about millions of dollars. Hard to forecast exactly what that is at this point, but it's going to be more than $3 million for sure.
I appreciate that. So, with that in mind, I think because these are going to come to us in bits and pieces over the next, months or years, that I think it's really important as we do this that we continue to bookmark and provide context with each conversation on what we did last time, what we're anticipating in the future, so that the public can really stay apprised as we make these big decisions with this funding, some of which will be loans, which will be paid back to the city. I know that our revolving loan program has been very successful and doesn't involve a subsidy or a tax deferral or any of those things, and has been one of our, I think, most successful tools for supporting downtown development. And in terms of park development, I just want to reassure constituents in the Santa Clara area and North Eugene that even while working on this particular park, it's not implicating the work on other parks in the city that staff is actively pursuing, purchasing parkland in Santa Clara, and that this won't stop that or interfere with that. On the quiet zone, I am a little concerned. I think we really do need to have a robust public discussion before we contemplate closing crossings, other than the obvious one we just talked about at 8th, which doesn't implicate anyone's business. I'm worried that we appear to be making decisions before we've really had a chance for folks who are really impacted along the route to be involved in the conversation. So I think it's very important that we be mindful about that. And finally, I really appreciate the triple bottom line analysis. I think that's very important, and it's great to see, because there is no displacement and it's a brownfield, we're really making the most of what's been utilized as industrial land to open up an area of our community to the rest of us to enjoy and be a part of that. So that I really appreciate that work. So with that, I've got Councillor Brown and Councillor Evans in the queue. Councillor Brown?
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. I'd like to go to the rail crossings. I believe you said it's about a 3-year process to actually get it done with the Federal Railroad Administration.
Right. It'll be one,
ODOT.
and that's more the coordination piece with the construction is probably one construction season. But it's working with those different bureaucracies that would take.
So 3
time.
years from now, we could expect to start construction?
Right.
Okay. All right. Well, and then looking at the map, I see that there's 3 crossings that are included, but the way I'm reading the map is 5th and Pearl is not in the Riverfront Urban Renewal District.
Right. It's not physical. Well, neither is High is adjacent to the district, but not physically. It's the boundary of the district.
I say, well, I've just figured that would go down the middle of the street, and that would be included. That could be included in the district. So, what that means, I believe, would be that you couldn't use any Riverfront Urban Renewal district funds on the Fifth and Pearl crossing. Is that correct?
So there are two issues. One issue is what can we use money for planning purposes. A second issue is what can we use money for the actual construction. What I've advised staff is that the money that you're being requested to approve today for planning purposes would be an authorized use, since the crossings, the quiet zone is critical to trying to make something happen in the district itself. To do the planning for those three crossings would be okay. In terms of the construction itself, what I've told staff is it's a question that I haven't yet answered, even including the one that's adjacent to it. So clearly we can use urban renewal dollars for the crossing that is in the district. For the one that's adjacent or the other one, haven't answered that, but the only thing you're being asked to approve today is planning dollars, where I've said yes, that's okay.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that's acceptable. But I just wanted to point out that, as the funding, I don't believe that urban renewal funds riverfront could be used for Fifth and Pearl, and probably not for Fifth and High, would be my guess. Anyway, the one thing that really gives me pause is I'm fine with approving the motions today, except perhaps the last one. I don't know if I can support that one just yet. The Franklin Multi-Way Boulevard implementation. I see that the minimum loan amount is $10 million that the city would be applying for. Is that correct? Or I mean the grant, and then we would have to kick in, forget what it was,
2.5 million.
2.5 million. Yeah, I'm just kind of have a hard time with that one, because I think Franklin's in pretty good shape. I think the sidewalks are in good shape, and we've got, MX is running down there, traffic flows, I drive it frequently. And I think about the other neighborhoods who are wondering, well, when will we get ours? When will we get our streets repaired and our crossings made safe, and sidewalks in our neighborhood where we don't have sidewalks? And I just don't know that that's critical use of that money. I think it could be used better in other neighborhoods. And so I don't know if I'll be able to support that last one or not, but just to further the discussion, the Riverfront Urban Renewal District is supposed to sunset in 2024, and so that's not very much time. It's 9 years, and 3 of the years it's going to take for the crossing. I'll have to come back. I'm running out of time.
Okay. Councilor Evans?
Thank you. A good presentation. I really appreciate all the work that's gone into this. I've got a couple of questions, though. So we're priming the pump here with public dollars effectively to attract also private investment. Do you have a ballpark figure or kind of a range of what that private investment is in terms of dollars, and what it's going to look like, and who, maybe you don't know specifically at this point, but who would be kind of the private side developers that comes along and partners with us in this project, besides the project manager, which is the foundation?
The U of O Foundation, they are the developer, they are the owner, so I don't think there's any indication that's come forward as to who they're going to partner with and so forth. They could decide not to partner. They could do all this themselves. But they're talking in the range of 200 to 250 million as kind of a build out of the entire site. And I think basically what you can do is really look at the master plan and say, if the site was built out and consistent with the master plan, roughly what's the amount of the investment, and that's kind of, I think, the approach they've taken thus far. But that range is in the couple $100 million, so it's significant.
And Denny, also, how does this impact the surrounding areas of development that we currently have in play now? So downtown, Coburg Road, more development on the U of O campus side. Are we really looking to, again, enhance more of that collateral development, or will this draw or take away from the development that we currently are engaged in?
Yeah, that's actually a good question. One of the reasons we're looking at kind of the whole area and not just the e-website is to really look at this as a bigger district, to see how these can kind of build and grow together and how they connect to each other. So those connections to, the Ferry Street Bridge and Coburg Road and Franklin Boulevard and downtown down 8th are very, very important, really, for the whole area to kind of thrive. I don't think it competes with, for example, you referenced downtown. We've had a lot of success downtown. Most of the success downtown is really around retail, commercial, tech companies. We have some new market rate housing, but not a lot. This project is really focused in large part on housing, so it really is going to become kind of a new residential neighborhood. It just happens to be downtown and on the river. So in that sense, you would have a lot of people living on the river that would come to downtown. And so I think there's a lot of synergy there, a lot of opportunity for students to come downtown to the river and for the whole community to gather. So I don't think they compete. I think this is a complement. I think this is bigger than that. I think this is our riverfront. This is a legacy project. This will create a huge opportunity for Eugene to kind of have an identity, and this identity is a really strong connection to the river and this world-class open space along the river that I think will kind of help economic development-wise and draw an investment, not only in this area, but throughout the entire community. So it's a lofty goal, but I really think there's a tremendous opportunity here.
So, and my last question is this. When I envision this, what I'm kind of thinking about is what, say, the Pittsburgh riverfront looked like back in the late 70s and early 80s when that was redeveloped and you had a lot of shops, a lot of nightlife, a lot of, housing or apartments that came, to be in that particular area, the Three Rivers area. And I'm kind of getting a sense that that's sort of where we're moving toward, kind of like what Portland is now in terms of its riverfront. I'm just trying to grasp in terms of a visual what that's really going to end up looking like. I know you talked a little bit about that before, but it kind of gives me the feeling that downtown in itself will shift eastward, and that we're not doing what I guess plastic surgeons call the nip and tuck, but we're doing a full reconstruction. This is a major facelift. So I'm a little bit concerned about how that looks. Not that I'm against that, but I just, have some concerns about where the focus of the center of the city is ultimately going to be.
And if I could just respond quickly, you mentioned Portland. I think if you go back historically, the west bank of the Willamette River in downtown Portland, I think used to have like an interstate riding, and they made a major change to reconnect their downtown to the river, and they introduced open space and they relocated the highway system. It was transformational. It made a huge impact in what we know now as downtown Portland. I don't know that it can be that big because we're not going to be Portland, but I think this has the opportunity like that to remove barriers like railroad tracks and brownfields and really connect downtown the river in a different way with open space and new developments.
Good.
Councilor Clark?
Thank you. I have some of George Brown's concerns when I read the last item on the tick list here, in that I've served with Claire now as well on the Beltline Redevelopment Committee for ODOT for, 6-8 years, and we may actually rebuild that one day. We're almost to NEPA, and this looks to be expedited and fast-tracked, and despite our revitalized TSP and everything else, I'm glad that we're doing it, but it seems as though other projects that are quite important to many may suffer by comparison, and I want to ensure that doesn't happen in terms of its timing. But that said, I think this is a wonderful idea to leverage a few $1 million of public investment to reap hundreds of millions in private investment in our waterfront. I think that the estimated $3 or $4 million a year in the new tax revenue to the city from the increased value of that private property on there makes that return on public investment certainly worthwhile. I think that Claire's comment about making sure that the public understands a contextual kind of iterative process that we're doing here, making sure they understand what decisions we're making and why and process, can be better done if we actually make more of what Denny said than we have so far. The world is coming to Eugene in 2021, in 6 years, and what we want to be able to show them is a world-class riverfront district to match our world-class university and our world-class river that runs through our community and our revitalized downtown. This is an opportunity to showcase our community on a stage bigger than any we've ever had before. And so this is a challenge, and I think this meets that challenge. This is a goal that's worthy of that challenge, and I think it's a good thing that we're doing. And I think for the little, relatively, public investment, the returns will be very much worth it. So, thank you.
Councilor Zelenka?
Yeah, very excited about all these plans and actions. I do indeed think it'll be transformational and will leverage hundreds of millions of dollars of private investment, and I think that's exactly where we should be as a city. Claire said most of the things I was going to say. I actually took myself out of the queue, but I wanted to reiterate one of Claire's points and make another comment that, and Mike just made the same point, which is concern about making sure that we engage the public early and often in this process and make sure that they're involved in this planning, but also in commenting on it and providing input into it. I think that's really critical. Some of these things are going to be controversial, like the quiet zone and other things, but ultimately necessary. With respect to the Walnut Station and Franklin Multi-Boulevard plan, maybe you can give us a little bit of background on that. How long have we been working on that plan? How many years? How many times has it come before council? And what kind of council approvals directions have we given over the last couple of years to get us to the point where we're actually getting to the point where we need to study it to move to the next phase?
Okay. So if you recall that slide, and it's in the PowerPoint presentation, the plan was adopted in 2010, and it's appeared in the 6-year capital improvement program as a placeholder project for numerous years. The reason we brought it forward at this time is because we recently completed this vision of the river districts from downtown Springfield to downtown Eugene, and Springfield is completing their facility plan and NEPA documentation for their section of Franklin Boulevard. They're actively pursuing a Tiger grant for the implementation of that. The university is looking to jump over Franklin Boulevard and expand to the north to those properties. And while Franklin Boulevard carries traffic very well, it's a huge barrier for pedestrians and cyclists and even traffic to get from the south side to the north side. So this is an opportunity to, and then with the 2021 World Track and Field Champions coming to Eugene, it's an opportunity to move that project forward, build on what Springfield has done, what the university has done in the planning work that we have done. And the Tiger grant is it's a unique type of grant. It's not one that would be a good fit for the Beltline. That's more of a traditional transportation project. The Tiger grants are focused on not only transportation but land use and economic development, and that's why we think this is a good fit at this time to aggressively move that project forward.
Good. I think the council recalls Monday we were having on items. I mentioned that we had at MPC had supported Springfield's application for a Tiger grant for Franklin Boulevard, and that was a $30 million grant with a $15 million local match, of which a lot of that would come from the state and ODOT. And again, it's a different type of grant than would be used for, say, the Beltline movement or other kinds of road improvements that we would use. This is more along the lines of economic development and restructuring the infrastructure to facilitate that economic development, and that's through road improvements. So it wouldn't be applicable in a lot of different areas, and this is the one area over the years that we've identified as the area that's got the most potential for that kind of improvement in the Eugene and Springfield, in the Eugene area, which is why we approved the plan in 2010 for the Franklin Boulevard multi-use area and that whole Walnut Station planning that we've done over the years, and so we don't have any other place where we've got planning further enough along to even come to the council to start to apply or to ask for money for planning. This one is so far beyond everything else that we've done that we can put that in the queue over the years for a bunch of reasons. It would probably take us another decade to get to where we are for Franklin and other parts of the city. So I don't know that it would end up being something that would be at the expense of other things in the city because of the way that we've done it and the process that we have to go through in order to get to where we are today.
And just to be clear, we're actively pursuing the funding of the Beltline project with ODOT and our regional partners and through both the Metropolitan Policy Committee and the Lane County Area Commission on Transportation. So that's our region's priority, to move that project forward in the traditional state transportation improvement program process.
In fact, it's the number one priority for moving forward in our transportation funding plan at the MPC. So yeah, and that would be a completely different pool of money. No, thanks.
Okay. Councilor Taylor.
Thank you. First, I want to comment on the involving the public. I think we need to inform the public. Urban renewal does not create money. It diverts money from other governments. The money is diverted from the city's general fund, from the county's funds, from schools. It is not new money, and we all pay taxes to urban renewal. If you look on your tax bill, you'll see a line that says urban renewal, downtown urban renewal, down riverfront urban renewal. We have, so far, we've never made any money from the downtown urban renewal district. The idea originally was you clean up blight and you add to the taxable income, taxable property, the tax value, and the city gets the money. We've never gotten any money from that, and never will, because it's unless it ends someday, maybe. But it's gone on and on. As for comments on other things, oh, my glasses are here. I thought I put them away. I'm interested, kind of amused by all the talk about we're going to have company, therefore we need to get things ready, and it reminds me of neglecting things, day-to-day things, because everything's for the company that's coming. There are lots of things in this city that need to be done that aren't for the benefit of people who are coming here in a few years. They're for the benefit of the people who live here now, which I think is more important. I had a comment on the moving downtown. I think that could happen, what Greg said about maybe downtown will move over there. I remember when the Riverfront Research Park started, the first things that went there were things that left downtown. At the same time that we were trying to get people to stay downtown, to come downtown, that was more attractive, so they moved over there. And I could see that happening again. Mainly, I am really concerned about spending this much of the public's money, and it is the public's money, without their consent. And I think if we're spending huge amounts of money, there should be a vote on whether we do this, whether we invest public money in this project. And also there really should be a vote on whether we continue having an urban renewal district. But hesitant to spend the public's money, even on the planning part, until we know where the other money's coming from. Thank you.
So anyone else want to speak in round one? If not, Councilor Brown?
Thank you. Let's go back to the Franklin multi-way implementation. When are the grants? When would the grant be awarded?
For the
Tiger grant, or is it step U? Let's see. Which one? For the study of the Franklin multi-way.
I believe that process is going to start late summer. And so before the end of the year, the Metropolitan Policy Committee would allocate the funding, and I can't remember the exact fiscal years, but the next several years of funding to projects throughout our region.
Okay, so we wouldn't know we'd get that money till next January?
We'd probably know before the end of the year, probably know
Before.
in October, November timeframe.
Okay, and then how long would the study itself take?
That would probably take 1 to 2 years.
Okay. And then there would be, it's estimated to cost, what I recall reading, about $10 million for the...
Right. Yeah, I can't remember the exact amount.
Something like
it would
that.
Be, yeah, it would be in that, we'd be at the bottom end of that grant eligibility in that
I see.
$12.5 million.
Okay, well, I guess we'd have to wait to see if we get it before we know where all the rest of the funding, how that would be funded. Okay, thank you. Let's just go back to the Riverfront Urban Renewal District in general, kind of the overview. There's, this in here, there's $25 to $30 million left in the spending cap. Do we have a more exact figure? I mean, that's kind of like give or take $5 million. It's kind of, I'd like to see it a little more exact than that.
Yeah, we were in the middle of updating that when this
Oh,
went
I
out,
see.
but
Okay.
we will have that for you.
Right, thank you. So anyway, the spending cap, it could be as much as $30 million. And that would mean the city would go in debt for, some of these projects. And some of them are worthy, and I don't have a problem with, like the railroad crossing, the street. There's got to be a street. But what can happen, and what happened downtown, I think, is a lot through the years, occasionally, really inappropriate uses were made of that money. And it's supposed to sunset in 2024. My guess is future council will be asked to extend that way beyond, because not all of this development's going to happen in there'd be like, assuming this is the thing, everything goes smoothly, the railroad crossing won't be done till 2018. That only leaves 6 years in the plan. Nobody's going to build anything until that's a guaranteed deal, and the streets are there. So who's going to want to develop in there? So this certain infrastructure has to be in place, but that leaves a very short time until the district's supposed to sunset. So I know that with a fair certainty that future council will be asked to extend that. And short extensions might be okay, but what happened downtown was we still have it. It's been 47 years. And so this money goes back into the district. It does not go to the general fund or the county or the schools. And that's my fear, is that this will, there's nice potential here, but this could be one of these open-ended things that never ends.
Would you like another round, Councilor Brown?
No, I don't think so. Thank you.
I've got Councilor Zelenka and then Councilor Taylor.
Yeah, on the Franklin Tiger Grant, the federal dollars for that are very limited. In fact, when we were talking about the one in Springfield, they said only 6% of the grant applications actually get funded because it's so competitive on a national basis. So I would imagine if we don't get that Tiger Grant for this, we probably wouldn't be moving forward on this project, because that would be a substantial way of funding this. But is it true that we need to do the facility planning and the environmental planning in order to be positioned for a successful Tiger Grant? So
Correct.
We wouldn't be able to even try for that matching grant if we don't get this part done now.
That's correct.
And And so we wouldn't be applying for the Tiger Grant for another more than a year.
That's right.
Right. Because we don't know what we're applying for yet until we do this study and the environmental studies, the plan and the studies. Right. Okay. Thanks.
I've got Councillor Taylor and then Councillor Clark, and then maybe we can put the motions on the table.
Thank you. I had a comment about the quiet zone. You're going to, it sounds as if we're just going to do it for downtown. And if we are doing that, and I'm not even sure that it's worth spending the money, but there are many people who aren't downtown who've been asking for a quiet zone. Many people who don't have the money or the prestige, the power to get us to act. And I have real problems with that. If we're going to have a quiet zone, it's only for this small area downtown. And then I have a question. Go ahead.
So when we talked at the last work session, that was the message that we left with, and the idea was that this would be the first phase of several phases of quiet zones.
I know about phases, yeah. I don't necessarily believe in them, but I know about them. And I have a question about the other part, the Franklin, which is counting on $95,000 from the Urban Renewal District. Could that money possibly come from another place? That's a question.
The answer is yes, it could, and if the council passes that motion, as you may notice, that motion is actually a motion of the City Council, not of the Urban Renewal Agency. So the Urban Renewal Agency is not actually committing that $95,000. The motion just says that's a possible source and where staff is thinking it would come from, but the council certainly could decide that it comes from another source.
I wanted to be sure that that wasn't an implied approval of using it for urban renewal. Thank you.
Councillor Clark.
Thank you. George, in 2024, I'll be 60, and I may well still be sitting at the table. So I'm going to try and remember what you said, because I think you're right.
I do.
All right. Thank you. I want to address something that Betty said.
I'll be 99.
I don't think it's important for us to so much to prepare our community for our guests. That's important, but it's not as important, you're right, as the people that live here and doing it for that reason. Now, I think that's more along the lines of the point I was trying to make, but I didn't say it as clearly as I could have. And you're right with the distinction. I've had a chance in years to be involved in a lot of volunteer organizations where we create large-scale events. I chaired a project where we did the 4th of July celebrations in Alton Baker Park that bring 12,000 people down there to light off fireworks. But I have never seen anything as well attended by the members of our own community as the Champions Parade that we did through downtown Eugene when the University of Oregon participated in the national championships. That was something everybody who lives here on every political side of the aisle was proud of. And it's different than some of the other things we do. That's a world-class university with a world-class successful program, and everybody's proud of that. I think it's important for our community at those places where we come together, and even if we disagree about other things, we have similar or the same appreciation for others. Our university's one of them. Our river's another one of them. And I want to say that I think, and the reinvigoration of our downtown is too, but I want to say that creating a world-class riverfront and a neighborhood and a place out of this, it can make it an important place for everybody in the community in the same way. And I think that's important for the people that live here. So I appreciate you saying that.
All right. Council Vice President, if you put our motions out, or one at a time.
I move to include the use of $140,000 of RURD funds for the design of the relocation of the 8th Avenue crossing on the June supplemental budget.
Second.
All those in favor, please indicate by raising your hand. And any opposed? Motion passes 7-1.
I move to include the use of $100,000 of RURD funds for design of the quiet zone on the June supplemental budget.
Second.
All those in favor, please indicate by raising your hand. Any opposed? All right.
See a theme.
Seconds are supposed to come from the
Oh.
senior member.
I see. Councilor Zelinka volunteered to make the seconds. All right.
Figured that.
So now we're going to adjourn the meeting of the Urban Renewal Agency.
One
more.
pardon.
One
Oh, sorry.
We have one more to go.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
My apologies.
I move to approve the River Loans Program guidelines.
She doesn't want a
Second.
There we go.
Doesn't mean I approve. It just
Okay.
means I.
Second motion. Yeah.
All those in favor, please raise your hand.
Let me guess, Betty.
And any opposed? Motion passes 7-1. Now I'm going to adjourn the Eugene Urban Renewal Agency and reconvene the meeting of the Eugene City Council for our last motion.
I move to approve the submittal of an STPU funding appropriation request of $850,000 for the development of the Franklin Multi-Way Boulevard Facility Plan and environmental studies with the intention to use RURD funds of $95,000 for the grant match.
Second.
All those in favor, please indicate. And any opposed? Motion passes 7-1. Thank you very much, everyone. And with that, we will adjourn today's meeting.
Thank you.